sunshine, plenty
Heading
of.
my way.
Oh, there we go. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Oh, we really shouldn't start singing these songs when we don't know
No,
the end of
no,
them,
no,
but I never know the end of them,
that's okay.
so you get snippets with
That's all
me.
right.
You know how there's all those snippets online, you can get snippets of this and that. Well, we're gonna
Mhm.
get a snippet today of story. Ha! Your life story. We're gonna get a snippet of that. Have you ever, like, wanted to, like, write your life story and you get frustrated and you just cannot figure out how to get going, or you get started and you never can keep it going? Our guest today, Flora Brown, is going to help us to sort that all out. Right, Flora?
Yes, I am.
Flora, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, even though I asked, how do you want to be introduced? I'm going to let you go ahead and do that yourself because you know yourself a whole lot better than I do. But right before you do that, in case anybody's listening, my name is Cyndilu. I'm the founder of beBOLDyou. This is the live recording of the beBOLDyou podcast, which will be up within a month or so. And we will let you know when that comes live. For those who are watching here, we may not interact with you directly because we are doing this as a live recording. For those watching on the pod or listening on the podcast, I'm done with all of the announcements now. We're going to move right on in and let Flora introduce herself. Go ahead, Miss Flora.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy Lou, for inviting me because I want you to know, even though we just met, a few months ago, you have been a big influence in my life. And so I'm very happy that I'm getting to join you on your show. And who am I? I have several names, I have several identities. I'm Dr.
Yeah.
Flora Brown, the professor, well, now retired professor. I'm also mom to 4 children. I'm also grandma to 3 children, and I am great grandma to 5. So it depends on who you are as to which one of those you call me. But I'm happy to be here today to share what I've learned in my life about going toward happiness, creating happiness, and how that ties into my current endeavor of helping people write their life stories. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri during a time when segregation was a big deal. And so we lived in all black neighborhood, all black. I went to all black schools until college. And for some people, that may seem like, some people paint that as a horrible experience, but they don't know, what your experience was. My experience was wonderful because I had a very hardworking, smart, sharp mom and father who supported her to the extent he could. And I don't mean financial support, but I mean all of her projects and endeavors, which I can understand because I always have projects and endeavors. She was a hairstylist. In those days, it said beautician, and she was one of the original, home-based businesses. So I grew up in a beauty shop, listening to a lot of women talk, and of course, children were to be seen and not heard, but I heard what they were saying. So I grew up in that environment, listening to what they were sharing, their woes, and of course, the beautician was always like a therapist. Women went to the beauty shop and they, shared their lives. But my mother was also, for some women, a banker because they would have situations where they didn't want their husbands to know they had saved some money from the grocery money. And so she became the banker, she was a therapist, she was all those things. And I listened as I was growing up to some of the things they were saying. And I started making up my mind about how I wanted my life to go based on the things I'd hear them saying. And one of the things that motivated me a lot was the fact that many people sound as if there's no way they can get whatever they want in life. And growing up, I always thought, why not? Fortunately, I enjoyed the things that were socially acceptable, like school, like doing well in school. And because my mom had a successful beauty shop business, but also loved music, she did not let go of her love of music. So on weekends, she played the piano and the organ at our church and other places too. So I grew up with a lot of music in my background and a lot of wonderful people because the leaders at my church and my schools were highly educated Black people because they couldn't get jobs other places. So I grew up with my pastor had a PhD, the director of Sunday school had a PhD. I grew up with all these highly educated people, but I didn't know exactly what those degrees meant. I just knew I loved school. So one day I asked one of the leaders, what is the highest degree you can earn? When I was 9 or 10 or something. And they said PhD. So I said it in my mind, I'm going to get a PhD one day. And so when people ask me many years later, what was my motivation? Because many people get their graduate degrees to get more money or to get prestige or whatever. I just got it because it was a childhood dream. And I thought, I'm going to get a PhD. But I
I
also
love
wanted to be
that.
a mom. And so I saw my mom modeling, having a business, being active at church, and I mean really active. She was active in PTA, she was active in the community, she worked the polls during voting times. She was very active, so I grew up with that. And I thought I could do that too. She also was an excellent seamstress, and I'm not kidding because she was much tougher than the clothing teachers we had in school. And so I grew up seeing all this talent around me, and I thought I can do that too. So it didn't bother me that I was going to work, be a teacher, get married, have children, travel, sew, cook, all these things. And fortunately, I was healthy. So that makes a big difference because if you're not healthy, it's a lot tougher. But so the other day I was in a meeting and they said, introduce yourself and tell us what you wanted to be when you grow up. And I said, a teacher. And that's what I became because I set my sights when I was very young that whatever I wanted, I could get it. I'd figure
Yeah.
it out. And I was surrounded by, positive people who were putting that idea forward. So I became a teacher first, junior high. That's a great age to start with because you either make it or you don't with
Oh my
them.
gosh, as a teacher?
Yes,
Yes.
they teach you how to teach. Okay, you either learn to teach because I already thought I knew how to teach because I had my credential and I'd done my student teaching. But when you get to the actual setting, you find out there are many things that they couldn't or didn't know to teach you. And one of the things was whatever your degree says that you're going to be teaching, that's not what you're going to be teaching. I was an English major and I, went in there with the intent of making them fall in love with literature and we were going to discuss literature. And learning to write and read along the way. However, I found out that what they needed more so was somebody to let them know they were worthwhile people and that they could be what they wanted to be. And so my class became not just learning the skills, but also building their self esteem. And to this day, when I talk to one of my former students, and that's been decades ago, um, I'm so happy to talk to them because I feel that when they were young and going through that stage, that I gave them something that's more valuable than just the typical education. Periodically, we would, I stopped the lesson sometimes because somebody would say something off the wall that wasn't in reality. And I'd say, okay, stop, put all your close your books, put pencils down, that's it. And they go, what? They always were they liked me because I was a surprise. They didn't know what we were going to do. I said, we're not talking about this story today. We're going to talk about life. And I would ask them, like, how many of you plan to uh, leave and go beyond, a certain major cross street to get to the other side of Los Angeles? And they would look at me kind of funny, like, what do you mean? I said, do you plan to go beyond this neighborhood? And eventually, I helped them to think about going beyond this little closed in, not only just physical geographical place, but the mentality. And I wanted them to grow up to realize that nobody else should define their success and define their lives. And I'm very happy that the ones that I'm in touch with, matter of fact, one of my students found me not too long ago from junior high days on Facebook,
Love it.
and he's retired now, and it's so funny because he was one of those tough students that was very bright but didn't like to show it. He wanted to be
Okay.
cool. And it's amazing that he and I now are Facebook friends. So junior high, I graduated, meaning I finished my term there and decided that I was going to go back and get my doctorate because I hit 30. And when I hit 30, every decade I reassess my life much more deeply than I've done in between the decade markers. And when I was approaching 30, I said I was going to get a PhD and I haven't gotten one yet. So I've got to figure out how to do that. And at the time, I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And fortunately, my husband agreed with this plan, except we didn't know how we were going to pay for it. And I was fortunately whenever I make up my mind, I'm led to what I need to get it. And I think when you want something and you can't think of anything else but that, it just stays on your mind. You're setting yourself up to pass the opportunities, and that's happened to me many times in my life. So in the case of the doctorate, I found a grant that paid for my entire 4 years of the doctoral program,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
was very grateful for it. And so I finished my degree with 2 kids to start, and a third one I had my third one while I was in the doctoral program. And I did that on purpose because I thought it would be easier to manage school and a baby than work and a baby. I mean, I had these very good sounding ideas, at the time. But anyway, so here I am. I finished that program. I went back to teaching in the university level. After that, I had my fourth child. Then I switched gears again and decided to teach community college level. Along the way, I've always had my foot, I'm going to blame my mother for this, always had my foot in two camps. Always was teaching and always had some entrepreneurial endeavor going because I loved being an entrepreneur, but I love teaching. So I decided I don't have to make a choice. I can do both. And so I've done that all along. If I get into entrepreneurial thing as the main thing, I end up teaching in it. When I had
Right.
a gift basket business at one point. I ended up becoming a speaker at the gift shows, and I started an organization, and had all these things going on. But I just had this sense of urgency in my life about wanting to do the things that came to mind that seemed worthwhile to me. So fast forward, here I am now, and I discovered a method of helping people write their life stories. And this became more important to me over the years because as my older relatives died, and even my mom, by the time she died, I realized that a lot of things, she talked to me a lot about her life and the relatives, but I didn't have it written down. It didn't occur to me to write these things down. So now I'm, caught with trying to remember the details, and it's very difficult. So to remember all those details. So I found this method and a couple of years ago, in 2016, and took the training and started on a program where I'm helping everyday people who think they don't have the skills to do this, helping them write their life stories to leave behind for their families. And not only for now, but for generations to come. And I always remember what is Wayne Dyer saying? Don't die with your song inside. I think he says, don't
Mm.
die with your music inside you.
Music inside you.
Yeah. And I very strongly believe if you have something in you that needs to come out and your life story needs to come out, you don't want to die with that because there's absolutely nobody else who can tell that story. Every now
Yeah.
and then I meet people who say somebody in their family wrote a story about the family, a history, and they're upset because they said, well, we don't like it because they didn't tell the truth and they didn't really tell the way it happened. I said, well, then write your
Ooh,
own version.
like your
Guess
own.
what? all of us will have a slightly different perspective on our family history. But
Yeah.
the life stories that I encourage people to write are stories about themselves, their values, their aspirations, especially their hardships, how they got over things. Because our hardships that we are able to figure our way through become a survival guide for other people. When someone reads that you have the same condition or situation that was very heartbreaking and painful and maybe lasted a long time, and they see that you persevered, that's a big encouragement. And that's happened to me a number of times in my life where I've talked to someone about a situation that was going on with me. And just from talking to them, even a short conversation with someone is very encouraging and inspiring. So I encourage people to write their life stories for that reason. And I must tell you that before the pandemic, I was set on doing it online because when I started it face to face, a lot of people, it was difficult. I live in Orange County, California, not too far from Disneyland. And there's a lot of communities, and we drive 20 miles to go to this, 10 miles to go to that. And no matter when you schedule something that's a face to face type meeting,
Oh my
it's
goodness,
not
driving in
convenient.
OC? Driving in the
Yes,
OC? Please. Yeah,
that's
I
right.
told I'm sorry. I had to break in there because
Go
I
right
have
ahead.
driven in the OC, as you can tell, because nobody would react the way I did unless you have driven there. I have driven from San Diego to LA and back again a couple, 2 or 3 times, and hello. The OC is
Well,
beautiful, wonderful, everything, but if you hit the traffic at the wrong time, which is most of the time, forget it.
and driving is just the first problem. The second one is parking,
Parking.
because depending on where you're going, even if there's free parking, you still got to park near the particular building that you're going to if you're going to a big complex. If there is paid parking, then you've got to make sure you watch the time because they will give you a ticket, a very hefty ticket in some places. So I wanted long time before the pandemic, I thought I have to set this up online because that's the only way it made sense. And what really struck me about doing that was I had friends who lived here in California, not too far from me, who, as I was putting this together, moved. I had a couple that the husband and wife came to one of my local things and then they moved to Minnesota. And, I had various other people who moved. So I thought, and of course, I know people around the world. And the first thing people ask is, well, where are your classes held? Well, it almost doesn't matter if they're local, almost nobody can come to those. So I was in the process, I researched, how I was going to do this online. I was getting it set up last year. And then, of course, this year, when the pandemic hit, I certainly don't want to say that it was a great thing that the pandemic hit, but I really believe that a lot of things that we are now doing online that are much more efficient and much more accessible, people would have balked to do it
Yeah,
online before
absolutely.
the pandemic. And they
Abs
would have, I went to a meeting yesterday online and it was, well, you know where San Diego is from Orange County. It's a 90-minute drive, which is, well, supposedly a 90-minute drive, depending on traffic,
right.
to go to this meeting from my house and 90 minutes back. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is afterwards you want to go out to lunch with all the people and then you spend your whole day going and coming for a 2-hour meeting.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we had it online, and it was at 10:30 to 12:30, whatever, and we ended, and that was it. Everybody said, "Goodbye, it was great seeing you." And, except for
And
the
you
look,
walk in
we
the
had question
kitchen
and
and you cook a meal.
That's right.
Great.
That's right. And, in addition to that, now I'm able to have my classes online. I'm able to, actually, I'm socializing online a lot as part of an organization I was in before, but we're doing more of it online. So I'm really having to reevaluate my time because I'm in a group that meets at 9 on Monday mornings, and the organizer is in London, but people all over the world join that, and I meet trivia night on Friday night, and it's all these different, and these people are from all over the world, and I love that because I love to travel anyway. So I think that has been one of the big things that we have learned how we can, what I call, pivot and adapt our lives to
Pivot.
what's going on now. Huh?
Pivot.
Pivot. So it's been great to be able to do things online, and I know that people are so eager. People are eager to get out and get back to regular socializing, but I hope people will keep the part of it like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
and will keep the the meetings and things that don't necessarily need to be done face to face. I mean, obviously, we want to get together with our families and friends for social things, but look at all that we can do without that if we have to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here I
There,
am.
there's been so much forced learning in
Yeah,
2020,
yeah,
where people now, who never would have ever thought about doing a Zoom are now leading Zoom meetings and getting their families together by Zoom and having birthday parties by Zoom. And it's
that's
just
right.
like, and before they didn't even know what Zoom was like, right?
Well, Zoom. I learned about Zoom before the pandemic started, and I thought, boy, if I had some financial savvy, I would have invested in Zoom. But I don't do the stock market. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I haven't made an effort. But I thought, whoa, because that guy had it going, and he, just is. I mean, now Zoom is being used, of course, as a generic term to
Hmm.
mean, as a verb, and
Yeah.
it normally that doesn't happen as fast as it happened. I mean, like the product Kleenex.
Yeah.
Kleenex was around for many years and eventually became a generic term. But Zoom became generic within what, a year, less than a year,
Yeah. Quick.
and that's been great. Yeah, and I love the creativity that you have to do. We had a great Thanksgiving celebration, my family, and I created a wonderful trivia Thanksgiving activities, and I was smart enough to keep it simple, though not too complex, because then they get frustrated with, my kids accuse me of turning everything into school. And so, but it was fun because, of course, we chit chatted and so forth. But doing the games, and then I gave prizes, Amazon gift cards, so I didn't have to mail anything. So it was cool. I enjoyed that, and we're going to do a Christmas one too.
That's awesome. That's such a great
Yeah,
idea. Ways to connect and ways to get together, which I think is a natural part of who you are.
yeah,
Wanting to connect with people and really enrich each other's lives, which
yeah,
is amazing. All
yeah.
right, I
That's
have these 10
important.
questions. You're gonna have to answer
Okay,
them really quick because
okay.
you introduced yourself in a way that I never ever could have. And thank you so much for that. You've told us some of your life story. And let me just quick before I get to this 10 questions, go over. I heard from your story that you turned around the child shall not be heard, only be seen but not heard, and you listened, you tuned in to what was happening around you, and you took in all that was happening. You made the power of a decision when you decided to do something, and you just set that absolutely in there. And then I love that you reassess your life every 10 years. Like, that is a great practice to be into. And then be willing to switch gears. It's that whole pivot thing. Those were like the highlights of what you were saying. You said so much more, but that was what I wrote down during our little convo. Or your introduction, I should say. um, so okay, so what is your favorite? We have the 10 Be Bold You questions that I ask every guest
Okay.
when it's their first time on. So, what is your favorite? Let me start this. Favorite
My favorite
color?
what?
Color.
My favorite color is red.
Red. And she has red on, and I've got
Yeah.
maroon, so we're pretty good. I got red back there. Red's a great color. And are you more introverted or extroverted?
Everybody thinks I'm very extroverted because I don't hesitate to speak up most times. But I think a big part of me is introverted in the sense that I do like to get quiet and reflect and piece things together when I'm listening to people. So I would say the average person thinks I'm extroverted, but I really have a big introverted personality.
It's true of so many people. What
That's
energizes you?
What energizes me is listening to various people's stories and conversations and coming out of it with something I can suggest to them that will tie
Okay.
together what they've said. I get so excited even when I run across something. Let's say I'm online looking researching and I run into something that's related to what you do. I get so excited. I can't wait to tell you about it because I think that that's how we learn and that's how we grow is when we share something. And I'm always on the lookout for something that will benefit other people in their personal lives or in their business lives. I love that energizes me a lot.
I love that. And what is the most exotic place you've ever visited or long to go to?
Exciting. Probably, you're going to be surprised because it was probably New Zealand. Because in New Zealand, I got to meet the Maori
Oh, yes.
people and attend some of their events, which of course I know the events were, they were performers and they had their villages and so forth. But I hadn't heard
That's their life, though. That's really
that's,
truly
yeah,
their life.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I learned it was exotic in the sense that I learned about their the chant, the song, the chant they do. What is it called? The
Haka?
haka. And I enjoyed that men and women participated in it, and I loved their outfits, and so that was probably the most exotic in a sense. But then
I
I
get
haven't
to
been
live
to
there.
Africa yet, so
She's like, "Yet." I
yet.
love that, "Yet." And what phrase or quote encourages you the most?
One of the things that encourages me the most is that nobody becomes somebody without the help of somebody else.
Yeah,
I
such a
think
good
we
one.
all, no matter how much achievement we think we've made, I think that uh, it's having either met directly, indirectly, read something that helped us, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
So it's our duty, our responsibility to help others as much as we can in a positive way. They don't need any help being put down. They need help being lifted up.
And what's been your favorite age?
The one I'm in.
Yay! Most people say that, and I love that, and it's
Yeah,
it's it's indicative of the people that I attract because I
that's
love
right.
the now moment,
That's
actually,
right.
so I'm not surprised. What is the book you're reading now? You had talked, a little bit about it before the show.
Oh, yeah. Right now I'm reading The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Before that, I would have said one of the books that influenced me a lot was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. I had
I
to
haven't read that one.
by the time when I read that book, I decided that would be one of the books I'd read every year. I haven't kept it up reading it every year, but every now and then I would take off from work, get the kids to school, take off from work, and get some tea and read that book again
I'm gonna be getting
because
me that
it
one.
was a turning point. Yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Feel the
Susan
fear and do it
Jeffers.
anyway.
That's
Okay,
right.
that's awesome. And do you create to live or live to create?
That's a good question. I think I live to create.
Awesome. And who has had the most influence on your life? They can be dead or alive, philosopher or parent.
Well, I'm probably the first thought would be my mother because, as I said earlier, she modeled how you can juggle and manage so many things successfully. And when I say influence, sometimes people think you mean they were perfect. Obviously, she wasn't perfect in every way. We had disagreements about things, especially as I grew older. But she influenced me a lot in terms of her tenacity and her setting goals, not the same way I set them, but it really became apparent to me when I visited her hometown that she was born and raised in, and looked at her relatives and other people around her. And even my youngest daughter said, "Wow, do you realize how progressive grandma was?" Because she left this town and went to what she considered, a better life.
Mm,
So I got a lot of influence from her on doing juggling things, and also the love of travel.
yeah, stepping
And
outside of the world.
yeah, and making a goal of my goal is to visit every continent except Antarctica. I don't have a desire to go there, and I'm always almost finished. I
I'm
just
with
have
you.
Africa to go to.
Nice.
So yeah,
Awesome. I can hook
yeah.
you up with some friends.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, I got lots of people in Africa. So give me one word that best describes you or describes you best.
I'm going to say what someone said to me the other day. I'm going to say uplift.
Oh, I love
Because
that.
someone shared with me that when she lives in Australia, by the way. She shared with me that when she sees me online, and she means just passing pictures of me. I don't even know her that well. We haven't met face to face. We've met online. But she said something like, "Whenever I see your smiling face online, it really lights me up and I feel so uplifted." And I
Oh,
thought, wow, that's really nice for someone to let you know that you have that, effect on them, and I'm
we
happy
have
that I
no
can.
clue.
We don't have a clue.
We have no
So,
clue who we're
yeah,
reaching, who we're touching.
that's right.
We're putting it out there and people are seeing us.
Yeah,
People are watching, people are
that's
listening,
right.
and people are being impacted. So keep doing what you're
That's
doing
right.
and don't let the fact that there's no viewers or whatever, keep
Yeah.
you from doing just do what you're doing. Someone's
Thank
going to see
you.
it.
I will.
Yeah. So, I'm going to now do our wee little commercial. The commercial
Okay.
today is, let me just put us out of here. Solo this on. There we go. Hey, I'm learning. I'm learning. Um,
All right.
so this is Becoming Bold You, and it is on sale in the Kindle version for 99 cents till the end of the year. And you can get it. We are sponsored today by that. And it should pop up in the comments where you can get that. But in case it doesn't,
Okay.
you just head on over to Amazon and look up Becoming Bold You, look up Cyndilu Miller, and you will find me. And that is what we are sponsored by today. And the beBOLDyou system is I'm just going to take that off now and hide that and tuck it away. So the beBOLDyou system is all about a lot of what you've been talking about, Flora, and a lot of the reason that I'm
Mhm.
attracted to you. Um, it's about making the choices. It's about realizing you have the power of choice of what you do with what happens in your life. What's happened in your life
Mhm.
yesterday does not have to define who you are today, nor
That's
does
right.
today have to define necessarily who you are tomorrow. You get to choose who you want to become, and you get to step outside of your world and look at life from a different perspective and
That's
see
right.
how other people. And the thing is that, like you said, the whole uplifting piece, right? You didn't know
Mhm.
that before that. You didn't know that you were
No.
perceived that way. We don't
Mhm.
know how we're perceived. We don't
That's right.
know how we're showing up in the world, but we can aim to become a certain thing. When we find out that somebody perceives us in not the manner we'd like to be perceived, I've been perceived before as short and abrupt. And what I was trying to do was release them to go and do what they needed to do next. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
bye. And they took that as I didn't like them, I didn't want them around, and I was just trying to slough them off. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh no, I was just trying to like release you. Just go do what you want to, like, goodbye. I'm
Yeah.
cool with
Yeah.
it. Like, off you
Yeah.
go. And I was like, oh wow. So you have to like kind of step outside yourself and see how they're going to see you. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that we have to become like for somebody. We don't have to change our behavior for
That's
somebody,
right.
but just be
Exactly.
aware if you're trying to show up in a certain way, then you get to choose how that is. And you get
Yeah.
to choose who your personality is that you show, because I'm sure you were a different person in the junior high classroom than you were when you were teaching community college. I'm
I don't
assuming
know.
you showed up differently.
I don't know because in the community college,
Well,
I
that's true. I should have
had
thought
so
about
many.
that. Community
Well, here's
college
the
is the
thing.
same.
Well, even university, I had so many skills that I built because of those junior high kids that I did not have problems in any of the other teaching levels. Whereas some people who never, who started straight into college teaching had discipline problems. I thought, how could you be having a discipline problem with adults? Because they hadn't had that foundation that I had. And I everything I learned about working with the what is that, 7th through ninth grade, those preteens and teens, I used it in teaching adults. It works all
Yeah.
the way. So I was fortunate that I had that behind me. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that is the first half of the show, which is getting to know you. Now we're going
Uh-huh.
to get to know what you do right now. And you actually said the perfect thing because I wanted to talk with you a little bit about when you're writing a book and you're writing your life story. Is there a perfect time?
Yes, right now. The perfect
Exactly.
time to write because when you get the idea, then that's the time. And too many people wait or think they need to wait until everything's perfect. If you wait until until you have so-called have time, actually you have the same amount of time now that you've ever had, 24 hours. And it's how you use the time that matters. When it comes to writing books, you have, of course, two pathways, well, more than two, but at least two, because you have a nonfiction book and you have the fiction book. Then you have the traditional publishing route and you have the self publishing route. So you have a couple of things to do or decisions to make. But I say when you have the desire to write a book and that's all you can think about, that's kind of my gauge. When that's all I can think about is whatever it is I want to do, I'm drawn to somebody that can help me. I'm drawn to a class. I'm drawn to pass by a building that has a sign on it. I'm drawn to it because I think when you've put it out there in the atmosphere, you put it in the universe, then you are attracted. The two of you are attracted to each other. And when that happens, I say jump on it. And it may take you, it doesn't matter how long it takes you. When I went back to get my doctorate, some people asked, how long do you think it'll take? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm going to finish whatever time it takes. And we worry too much about that. Nowadays, of course, we're very fortunate with the technology that you can certainly write a book a lot faster than you could in the old days. And what we call a book has changed. In
Hmm.
the past, a book was paper, you know, and was a book. Now, your ebook, Kindle on
Hmm.
Kindle or any other device like that, is not paper. The page numbers aren't not even counted as pages. It's counted as locations and
Yeah.
turns. Audiobook, another version of a book. So the definition of book has changed. But I say if you want to write a book and that's all you can think about, start finding other people who have done it successfully. And by success, I don't mean they are bestsellers or made $1 million.
Which
People
gets
who
us
have
into
been able
the
to do it.
next piece, brings us right to the next piece, thinking our life story has to be a bestseller, a memoir, like the big autobiographies. So is there a perfect story? The perfect story is what?
The well, first of all, you mentioned memoir. If you're writing a memoir, my thinking is to not worry about particular publishing it for retail sales. The program I teach is for the everyday person who perhaps has never considered selling, most of them never considered selling their story, but they want to leave it behind for their family. That is the best place to start. However, if you are a writer and you start with the notion that you want to sell it and you hope to make a living from writing your memoir, then that is a different path you'll have to take, because now you have to consider what the public wants. If you're writing your own memoir for yourself and your family, you're just trying to share your feelings, your fears, your aspirations. It's not going to be the same book that a coach would advise you to write for the public. There's some things for the public that you would leave out because they couldn't care less. Your family needs to know as much detail as possible. Things you think would be boring, they want to know. I mean, I one of the activities I do when I do a 5-day challenge is to ask the participants, what are some things you wish you knew about your grandparents that you don't know? Which is a lot, because a lot of them didn't talk to us or write it down. And they'll say, well, I never knew how did they meet? What was their daily life like? Now, to the general public, that might be a boring thing to share that, but to your family later on, especially after you've passed on and you're talking a couple of generations, they're going to be so delighted to know something about that ancestor which they have no chance of meeting. So, yeah, it's no perfect story. It's about what your intent are. You know who's your intended audience and what's your intent.
So that really kind of covers, the perfect purpose. Like, what is the purpose that you're writing that for? What is the purpose you're
Uh,
writing for, right?
the most important purpose is that you have a story that needs to come out. You are compelled to write it. When you have that urge to get that story out, that's a perfect purpose. Whether
Yes.
it's, for retail sales or for your family, because any story that you don't get out of your system, and out into the world, is having a potentially negative effect on you. As Maya Angelou said something about the untold story, there's nothing worse than bearing the burden of an untold story. And so if you're not sharing your story, and it doesn't have to be, riveting and deep, dark secrets, but just sharing what's inside of you, getting it out. It's beneficial to those who get to read it, and I think it's harmful to you to keep it in.
Yeah. So that leads right into the question that I had about, lots of times people hesitate to start writing because they're afraid of hurting someone else. So they want it to be perfectly pain free. And I don't think any story is perfectly pain free, right? Like, our lives are not
Right.
perfectly pain free.
Well, that brings up I have a free ebook for people. If they go to my site, florabrown.com, uh, they'll find one of the tabs on the top says trouble with your story, or story trouble. If they click that, they can sign up and get a free ebook which talks about this very thing. There. All right, you're on the ball. And the reason I wrote that is the very thing you're saying. They worry about hurting other people. They worry about airing their dirty laundry, as they used to call it when I was growing up. They worry that their lives are boring and a whole bunch of things. So I wrote that so that people can, hopefully, we can dispel some of those. But the pain free, I want to talk about that just real quickly, because there's no way for us. I had two sisters, and we were about a year apart. And then we had an older brother that was from a different father that was like 16 years older than the three of us. There's no way that the four of us could have written a story about growing up that would have been any way resemble each story, because my brother's life was very different from ours. But even my sisters, growing up in the same house about a year and a half apart, we had very different stories had we written them. And you can just tell by talking to people. That's what Thanksgiving dinners reveal. When you talk at this Thanksgiving dinner, all of those different versions of things. Somebody asked me the other night at this trivia thing. My youngest daughter is a member of that group, and they asked her. I guess they got to talking before I came in about parents raising their kids, and did you spank your children? And I said, you know what? When Adrian joins the meeting, why don't you ask her, because her view of that answer is going to be different. And it
Mhm.
was. So I didn't respond either. I said, talk to Adrian. She's my fourth child. She can share, how I handled that. And she did. And when she finished, I didn't say anything because that was her view.
Yeah,
And so we have
exactly.
to be willing to tell our view, but not in a sense of revenge. So we can't say, because I have a lot of bitterness toward a given sister or relative to write this horrible, scathing attack. That's not beneficial. All you can talk about is how you felt toward something that happened, in your perspective. This thing happened, and this is how I felt about it. But each of those other people are going to have a different view. You can't worry about that. If you are worried about it, then you need to hire a lawyer. Two, if you're concerned about being sued and so forth, then a lawyer can, they specialize in that kind of thing, libel and so forth. Some people think, well, I could change the names. Yeah, you could, but how many people that know you will be fooled by that? If I
Hmm.
tell my story and I name my two sisters some other name, people are going to know that. Even if you make them other characters, people are going to recognize the incidents because people were there. So you really can't worry about that, and you have to be willing to get some kickback on that. If and you can get kickback on and kickback isn't the right word. What is it? Pushback on positive things you say.
Yeah.
The first time I started writing a Christmas letter every year about 20 years ago, and I put in poetic form and sent it to the relatives. Well, one of the first people that complained was my sister-in-law, who I didn't know very well, but she felt like I was jinxing the family by talking about the positive things that had happened in our life that year, and with my husband
Oh,
and my
wow.
kids. Yeah, there
So
are
she
people
was
that
con
they think
wow.
that
I'm
you
sorry,
shouldn't,
just wow.
that they think you're bragging, if you talk only
Mm,
about the accomplishments. And in some ways, I thought, okay, there are plenty of things you can talk about. When you have four children, you can talk about, who broke their leg and who did this and that. But you only have so much time and space. So I kind of hit the highlights of each thing. But yeah, there are people that will be bent out of shape if you share the positive stuff too. So
yeah.
they'll think it's bragging. And there are people that think you're jinxing the family and that something bad is going to happen because of that. You're tempting the devil or
Wow.
whatever their viewpoint is. So that's why you have to do, do it your way and, and not worry about them. They're entitled to their opinion, and you can't be undone by their opinion. Just thank you for sharing.
I think that's true. You can't be
That's
undone,
all.
but also thanking them for sharing. Thank you
That's
so
right.
much for sharing. I appreciate your viewpoint,
Yeah.
and then let it
And
go.
sometimes their viewpoint will give you another perspective. I mean, they may share something that at first stings, and then you might go, maybe I should, because I do think that people are more willing to listen to you if you share the ups and the downs. It's kind of the reason that social media is so popular right now. People are quite willing to get on without makeup and get on, in the less than perfect condition and share the bloopers, for example. In the old days, I guess they threw away those bloopers when they were making movies and TV shows. Then they got smart and they saved them. They can make a whole show, make some more money by
Yeah.
showing how they messed up and how they had to do 30 takes before they got that one take that you saw that was perfect. So there is something to be said for sharing the so-called dirty laundry, and I think people do get encouraged. Look at what's happened with the news media now. The newscasters that are broadcasting from home that are set up in their garages and their spare bedroom and whatever because they can't go to the studio anymore.
And the kids are
And
heard in the background
kids
and
in the background,
coming in,
and
the dog
and
runs
even
through.
one little toddler came running in this guy's bedroom where he was a serious newscaster too, and the door had been closed, and they had, the housekeeper or whoever was there supposed to be watching the kid, and that kid came running in there and ran right to his dad, and it was so funny because I visualized that if that had happened to a woman, maybe, I don't know for sure, she might have greeted the kid at least and said, "Say hi to everybody," or something. But this man was just totally undone. He didn't know what to do with that. And luckily, the adult who was supposed to be watching the kid came running in there and got the
Scooped
kid
him
out of
away.
there. Yeah. But that shows you that what we used to see in studios, it's a huge production of other people making it perfect, whereas when we're doing it at home now, all of us, including the experts, are having to deal with what we have to do, those of us who are not, you know, big deal broadcasters that have a whole team of people. I mean, you realize how many people they have working, how many cameras they have, all of that to make that show happen?
Yeah,
They're not doing it single-handedly
100%.
like what we're doing. To be commended.
Right?
Yeah,
I know. The
yeah,
production that happens and the things that you have to learn in order to do your own producing, and I've produced some shows for some other people and relieve that pressure from them, because sometimes it's just that piece of it that keeps you from going live, or
yeah,
sometimes it's not knowing the writing process that keeps you from writing, right? And so you
yeah,
walk people through that. You
yeah.
help them to figure out what that writing process is. They don't have to be a perfect writer right up front, right? Because you're going to help them learn that process and take them
Well,
through a process.
that's the magic of the technique I use. We don't start talking about things like, once upon a time I was born and this so forth. We do activities that stimulate your memory. And the secret is you start where you are. If I'm here at home and I need to go to the store, I have to pull my car away from this location to go to the store. I don't have to go to the edge of town and then go to the store. I start where I am. So with your life story, you start where you are. And by that, I mean, when we're doing memories, and I give them some carefully collected themes to choose from. But once they start, it could be something that happened yesterday, it could be something that happened years ago, but they start with that theme. And believe me, I had the same problem. When I retired, my oldest daughter gave me a book that was supposed to help me write my life story. It wasn't using the technique that I used, and I had trouble. I was already a published writer and a retired teacher with an English major and all these degrees, but I had trouble with it. Your life story is very personal, and it's tough to know where to start. So that's why when I discovered this method, I realized this is for everybody. And the
Yeah.
people are so shocked we work in groups. Well, they work at home and write their stories, but when they come back to class and we meet online, they read their stories in their small group, and they are so amazed at how their story is received by the classmates, because we are so, caught up in our own little world, and we think, well, this is pretty boring. And then they read their stories and the other people go, "Wow, that was wonderful how your mother managed running a farm and raising your kids and this and that. That's wonderful that you grew up with that experience." So whatever they've discounted in their lives, they find out that it's really, and so they get so encouraged, and they're free to share whatever they thought was a horrible experience, because whatever happened to you, believe me, it's happened to somebody else, maybe worse. They also are free to let out what they've been holding in. Every time it happens that people will say, well, there's some things I don't really want to write about. I said, well, don't write about those because you write about the memory that comes up when we do these activities. What do you think comes out as soon as they start writing at home? That very thing that they have not wanted to discuss all these years, it just spills out onto the page. And when they come to the class and they read it, they may start crying. And some of the rest of us may start crying too, because we can see this has been inside hurting them all this
Yeah.
time. And when it comes out, it's like, so it's beautiful. But what we end up with is, I call it a life story rather than a memoir because it's more like a collection of many memoirs.
Okay.
The finished it, you can go on and on for many stories, but a memoir is what most people think about. A memoir tends to deal with one episode, maybe your adolescent years, your high school years, and it could fill up a whole book. But with the life stories that we do, one time you could be talking about high school, you could be talking about marriage, a health issue that made a difference in your life, a turning point, all these different things. And so I think of it sort of more like a pizza of little mini memoirs. Some people call them flash memoirs, some people call them mini memoirs because you have all these collection of stories. Yeah.
I
And you can
love
go
that.
on as long as you want with them.
And we have been going for almost an hour,
All
Flora.
right.
So our time is coming to an end. I want to make sure that we let people know where they can connect with you. So I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and pop that link on the screen. And I'm popping it right on to the Storyteller Trouble.
Oh,
And
good. Story trouble. Okay.
yeah, so that people can go ahead and get that.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure. It doesn't look like the links are showing up in the automatically like they're supposed. Oh, there it goes. Now it is. It's working, working.
Cool.
Yay.
Yeah.
So if anyone's watching the stream or you're watching it on the live on demand replay, you can go ahead and get it. Go on over there and get that and connect with Flora there. You can also find her on Facebook. Just look her on up.
That's right. And I want to add something for those who are
Yep.
interested. I do periodically have a free 5-day challenge where every day for 5 days we do a piece of something that has to do with life stories. And then I also have a 6-week class. And coming up next weekend, I'm going to do a 90-minute webinar, which I'm going to be posting this week on my site, that will talk about it's not up there yet because I've got to go and post it. But it's mainly designed for people who have finished a series of stories. How can you put those together to give your family? And I'm going to talk about the different ways you can do that in terms of, like we were talking about, paper, ebook, audio, and some other ideas. And there are people who maybe haven't even been in my class that might be interested in that, because you'd be surprised how many people have been writing in journals and writing their life stories for years and didn't know what to do with them and put them aside and got discouraged. So I'd be more than happy to work with those people too.
Awesome. So, y'all, you got a ways to connect, you got things to do. And remember that we are sponsored by the beBOLDyou, Becoming Bold You book, which I have put on sale till the end of the year in the Kindle version for 99 cents. So go ahead on over and grab that so that you can make up your own decision about who you want to become.
That's right.
Flora, thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any
Thank you.
last words that you'd like to
Well,
share?
I just want to urge everybody to get your book, which I'm going to get right after we end this. And
Thank you.
also, I assume it's okay that I go and share. I told you I can't keep anything to myself. When I
Nope,
find out about
share.
something good, I share it. So I'm going to be sharing it over on my timeline and in my groups.
Thank
And
you so much.
know that it ties right in with what we've been talking about. It's all connected. And my final words are, anyone who is even mildly interested in writing their life stories or finding out more about it, I have a page which is Your Life Story Matters, and I have a group. So they can go and, of course, the page is completely open to the public. The group you do have to join, but I'll be more than happy to give you more information, answer your questions, and
Uh, uh,
help you get started on an important job you have to do to get your life story told.
so is that a .com?
The
Yourlifestorymatters.com?
no,
I think it is.
okay, over on Facebook, it's how is it done on Facebook? It's facebook.com/,
I'm
Dr.
gonna go
Flora
find it
Brown.
right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna go find it.
Okay. And I have Dr. Flora Brown at the end of the page. Then the group, you know how they have the word groups after facebook.com?
Mhm.
And then it says Your Life Story Matters. That's the group. But they should probably go to the page. It's easier to just start there and then join the group.
So here is the page, folks, coming right at you right now. Post it. Showing it here on the screen. I'm gonna
There you go.
post it in the comments so everyone can find it. Boom, just like that, it's out to the world, Flora.
Thank you. And I see that one of the links you put over there is Spotlight Your Book Masterclass. That one's going to be replaced by the one about that I'm doing next week. So
Awesome.
it'll be in the same
They'll
spot, but it'll
they'll
be
find it.
replaced.
They'll find
They'll
their way.
find
They'll
it,
find their
or
way.
they can just contact me if they're not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so
So
much. This has been great.
this has been awesome and fun, and I appreciate you coming on and talking about writing your life story. It's something that I've been doing piecemeal. I have one book out that's a little bit of my
Huh.
life story, just like one um, story, and I don't normally talk about this. This is the proof copy. I've it's been for sale for a while, but it's
Mhm.
Meeting Cheryl Elizabeth, and it's a journey of healing, and
Oh.
it's literally about my daughter who is in heaven and how she came to
Mhm.
be in heaven and how she even came to be my daughter, the whole life story.
Wow, that's
So it's
beautiful,
kind of
and
her life
that's
story.
but you know what? That's an example of the fact that you can write many memoirs and many life stories,
Yeah,
because that one has its own, um, you know, beginning and ending. It has its own case that it's encased in. You can write many there's no limit to how many memoirs you can write
there's
or how
no
many
right or wrong
collections you can
way,
do.
right?
Nope. Nope. It's your way.
You can't get this wrong, people.
Can't
You
get this
can't
wrong.
get it wrong. So,
Unless you
all
don't
right,
do it. That's the only thing wrong you can do, is don't do it.
there you go. There you go. If you don't do it, nobody gets to hear it, see it,
Right.
read it, process it, absorb it, and be blessed by it.
That's right.
So, to my listeners on the podcast, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to live your life out loud and be bold you. Until next week, when we have another guest for you, see ya.